welcome back to another episode of Sarver's RC. Today we got the Slash Ultimate out. We're finally going to get around to installing the hot racing motor mount with the bearing support, and then also the billet aluminum bearing spacer for the slipper clutch. We're not going to be using the bearing just because you're going to be ditching the bearings in lieu of the bearing in the motor mount. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this. My truck did have a heat sink on it, so I went ahead and pulled that off. Just you can't reach the mesh screw and be able to remove the motor without taking that heat sink off. So I'll go ahead and readjust the camera and get all set up and get started on this. Okay, so as you can see, I do have the chassis brace on here as well. So if you don't have that, you're going to still be removing similar screws. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So those are all 2.5s. So 2.5 millimeter on these. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch out driver bits. Speed this up. Okay. A bit of a screw explosion there. Have to probably see if I can get to this. Alright. I always like to put my screws back where they came from, but we're not guessing when you go to reassemble. So if you didn't have this chassis brace on, you'd be removing the two screws here, and that's going to release the top of the rear end linkage. Flip the truck over. And that, you'll pull your whole rear assembly off there. Now you'll have access to your slipper clutch. So after you do that, still might have to finagle my way in here. just going to go ahead and remove the whole chassis bar. Should have probably just taken these off, the chassis bar off, that way we weren't having to sit through it, but I really was trying to capture all of the steps involved with getting that rear assembly off. The reason why I went ahead and moved the rest of it was just looked like I was getting that weird angle on this, and I was leery on stripping this screw out. So go ahead and get that snagged back down. Set this to the side. Alright, so now you can access the screw for the gear cover here. In particular, it's gunked up with dirt. That one there is a 2mm. So get that gear cover off. At this point, we'll have slipper assembly removed, and we could get started on the screws that will hold the motor mount in. Those are 2mm. Stay with me, guys. This one's probably going to be a longer video just with the amount of parts and whatnot that you have to remove. At this point too, you can get your motor mount screw undone. thermal paste all over my motor. Stuff is almost like anti-seize, it just gets everywhere. And notice my motor is clocked to the side as well. And that was to get the wires off to the side and be able to fit that heat sink on there. So at this point you'll have your motor pulled out and off to the side, and your motor mount should come off. I think actually there's a screw in the bottom holding it in place. Releases it entirely. Alright, so there you have your old motor mount assembly. You do have to remove the screw with this sensor here, and that will go into your new motor mount. This is going to work its way through here. Does not seem like it. Okay, so with the Ultimate, since it does have that sensing wire, you are going to have to go into your receiver box and unplug that, so that way you could thread it back through. And you have to go ahead and remove the entire assembly. At this point, you will see which wire you need to remove. I believe we're working with this one here. So once your cover's off, you'll see what you're working with. Just gotta chase this along. And it is going to be the one with the blue connector. We'll go ahead and unconnect that. Fortunately, we're going to have to snip the zip tie here. To be able to get that out. You also have a holder over here, keeps your wires in place. Alright, so now that you have all this pulled out, remove that, tear open your hot racing mount. Comes with one screw, not sure where that's going to go, but you'll get this piece put back in. Along with the small set screw. As you can see, pretty quickly you get to a point where you have screws everywhere. And get this one put back just so I don't lose it. Receiver cover, motor mount. There it is. So this is what we're working on here. Got that sensing wire back in. You will get your screw back into place. Once you have that, you can set your motor mount back in. So, all lined up there. Next we will work on the bearing supports. So you can see there's a little plastic bushing in here, as they call it, that when it gets hot, they will melt. So you're gonna thread your slipper nut off. Pull your spring. And there with the flat head. And there is your bushing assembly, which, believe it or not, the Ultimate already has it on there. So if you have an Ultimate, you can skip that step. So get your slipper nut tightened all the way down. And I'm going to do a half turn off. Okay, so we will get these two screws back into place. Get this other screw on this side. Give myself a little slack here to be able to line everything up. These two are going into plastic, so you don't need to worry about thread locker on those. These two top ones are going to go in when I put the chassis brace back on. Okay, so you need to get your output gear put back on. Mine was a little loose, so I could have been having an issue before this. So We'll snug that. Slide this assembly through your bearing support on that new motor mount. Get yourself aligned there. Make sure everything's spinning. Okay. Flip this back over. I think this has something to do with the motor plate. Okay. Sorry, this thing was just wedged in there. So you'll need to get that set mark onto your motor mount. Difficult to see in there, but at this point we'll put a little thread locker onto this screw that holds your gear mesh in place with the motor mount. And there's one screw you'd like to keep from getting loose. Actually going to take the time to route this underneath the motor, because one problem I was always having was that screw was right between the heat sink and whatnot. So if we can get it tucked up out of the way, we will. I said, guys, I know this is a long one, so bear with me. Alright, so that's up out of the way. We can get back to getting this in place. Seems to just be a really tight fit to get this to fit in this little slot that's in between the chassis . Again, maybe back some screws off a little bit, give yourself some tolerance to work with. Hopefully. Finally slipped in between. There's a little groove here in your chassis, along with the little eyelet nut to get that to where you can swing and pivot to get your mesh adjustment in there. So hopefully this wire being here isn't going to create an issue in the future, but we shall see. And the more I look at it, the more I'm not liking that. Go ahead and reroute this over the top, like the engineers at Traxxas wanted it to be. We might have told them they're wrong, you know. Got a little loose, give myself some room to where it's at least not just crammed on there. At this point, should be able to get your mesh screw in place. I'll set mesh once we have everything a little bit more together. So we'll go ahead and get this screw put back in place that we removed to fan dangle the motor mount. At this point, you can go ahead and get your chassis put back on as well. So not aligned. Alright guys, so after the GoPro overheating multiple times and whatnot, played around with it a little bit. Just an FYI, it's easier if you put your slipper assembly into your rear diff first and then slide that in to your drive shaft. Just makes it a lot easier getting that thing aligned. So go ahead and try to finish this one off. I don't know why it seems like anytime I film with the slash, it just seems to be a hassle, even though it's a great truck. But so these two bolts that are going to go into the bottom of your chassis, these are going to be going into aluminum now, so it's better to throw a little Loctite on those. This last one in there. Alright, so you should be all done with the rear. And yeah. Okay, so I will go ahead, for the sake of time lapse the rest of this, getting the wire back in the receiver and putting the chassis support back on. So get back to you when I'm done. All right, guys, so after quite a bit of frustration, the Slash Ultimate is back together. You can kind of see that motor mount hidden under there. If anybody knows of a billet gear cover that they make, let me know, because I'd like to top this off to where, you know, it kind of looks uniform instead of plastic covering up that good looking motor mount there. But truck's all back together. Can't wait to take it out, see how this thing does. I do have some springs to switch on it at some point in the near future, but as much as the Slash hasn't been on the channel as far as upgrades lately, it being an Ultimate kind of has everything it needs. It is one of the trucks that I absolutely drive the most and is one of the most fun. So can't wait to get this thing back out, see how these upgrades do, and I'll hit you guys with that video. All right, thank you.